So, this is a little video that shows how to use a spreadsheet I have. Like doing what we do, you end up using hourly weather data a lot. Like a lot of times you do regressions. Like here, this is plotting therms against outdoor air temperature and KW on this axis against outdoor air temperature. And you get these data clouds that you can use to like diagnose things and stuff like that. There's a whole string of blog posts I've done about that if you really aren't familiar and want to learn. Um, But also for me, like if I'm going someplace I haven't been before, like I'm going to go to Columbus next week to start a class, I usually just go grab a year or two's worth of hourly weather data for the place just to see what the climate looks like. Because that drives a lot of the stuff we're doing in buildings. And that'll become useful for energy calculations and stuff like that too. And if you just need temperature and dew point data, the fastest way to do it probably is use Bill Curran's um, little weather query file that shows up in that one of those training videos, and I sent that out to guys in the company too, so you all have that. But if you need more stuff, like say you want a cloud cover or wind or stuff like that, because you're going to look at solar and things like that, I keep going back and going to the National Weather Service. It's really not that hard to do, and basically once you set the spreadsheet up, it's really hard to get really easy to get the data into this format, and so that's sort of what I'm going to show you. The spreadsheet actually has a data set for Columbus, Ohio built into it just to show what it looks like, and so the way to use it is to basically just go get more data and then paste it in on top of that. And the way you start that is you basically, there's a link in the spreadsheet that'll take you to a web page where you can order the data. And basically, within a half hour, usually, of the time you fill this out, you'll have the data in your inbox, or links to it, I guess, really. And you want to use the simplified options. I tried the advanced options once, and that's pretty much why I use the simplified options. And when you click on that, you have to agree to their little policy. And then you basically, and this is worldwide data, it's like 35,000 different sites around the world. I think some of them have data back to like 1901 even. It's pretty cool. But you pick where you want to be, so the United States. And I actually am doing some stuff up in Seattle where I need a year or two's worth of data. So let's just go get that data. So I'm going to pick a country, the United States, and I'm going to say continue. And then I want to pick a station someplace in the state. So I'm going to say, look in the entire state, say continue. Oops, I forgot to pick the state. State of Washington. There we go. Say continue. And, oh, you know what? It was good. Since I want to pick selected stations in the state. There you go. Now to give me a list of stations, I can pick one of them. That would have gotten me all the data for the state of Washington, which is more than I need. And basically, the place I'm working, literally you can see Boeing Field from it. So this site right here is actually a pretty good site. But you can see there's tons and tons and tons. They're basically automated surface observation system sites. And you also need to know, like Columbus, I was looking for Columbus International Airport. Well, there wasn't one. The international airport there is called the Port of Columbus International Airport. And so, and these are listed alphabetically. So you might, if you don't see what you're looking for right away and there's an airport there, you might Google and see, well, exactly what do they call that airport. But anyway, having said all that, I know I can see Boeing Field from this building I'm working on. And there's two different record sets. I've never been sure why that is, other than somebody had a second record set going for a while. But I'm going to pick the one that has data all the way back to 1943 and right up to current data. So I'm going to pick that. I'm going to say continue. And then I'm going to tell it the date range I want. And I could use it, basically I want to look at this past summer and the summer of 2013, or I'm sorry, 2014 to 2015. So I'm going to go back all the way to January of 2014 and pick the data all the way up to right now, because I'm actually looking at stuff that's going on in the building now too. Now I could limit it to hourly observations, which sometimes makes messing with the data a little easier. But I usually get all of them, because what happens on these automated sites, like if an event happens, like a squall line moves through or something like that, it'll actually trigger extra observations, and sometimes that's really handy to know. So I don't narrow it down to only observations on the hour, and so I leave that unchecked. I say continue. And basically it's saying, sort of mimicking back to me, here's what you asked for. And they make you check this box that says you've viewed the inventory. This goes back, used to be you've actually paid $20 for a couple years of data, and now it's free. But they wanted to make sure you were getting what you wanted. Because if you pick the wrong station, it could have an empty data set. So I always think it's worth just taking a quick look. You hit that link, and what this is telling you is, for the year 2014, these are months: January, February, March. These are how many readings there were in that month. And so you'll notice, like, there are 0 readings for December of this year because it hasn't happened yet. There's 600 readings right now. We're almost at the end of September. If there was a reading every hour for a 30-day month, you'd have 720 readings. So you should see numbers at least, 700 or so. Higher numbers mean there was some event where they read more often than once an hour. That's all. So it looks like I got a good data set. That's just a separate tab that opened up. So I go back to the tab I came from. I say I acknowledge that, and you can check that even if you didn't do that. I just have gotten an empty data set occasionally because I screwed up, and so I just got in the habit of looking. You click this so they know you're not, a robot, and then you put in your email address here. Facility and you hit the submit button, and basically this link, the data won't be there yet because they have to build the data set, but eventually if you followed that link you'd get to your data set. So a lot of times I just leave this page open and go back and check for it, but the reality is within, like I said, probably 30 minutes of the time you send this out, you'll get an email back that basically will look something like this. And it basically has the list of stations, which is just one station, the inventory file that we looked at before we said submit. Then it has the data as a HTML file and as a text file. And for what we're doing, you just need the text file. So I'm going to download that. So I'm going to I guess I'm going to follow that link. I thought I could just say file save as. Oh, I know. I think it's if I follow this link here. Yeah, I can save the target. And incidentally, the reason all that's going on is I had ordered this data, earlier. So we'd have it to use. So this is the email I just showed you is actually from a previous order, not the order I just put in. So there probably won't be anything here when I hit this link. Yeah, it's not there yet. They haven't built the data set I just asked for. So anyway, the point of all that is that's how easy it is to get this data. So now let's take a look at the spreadsheet for a minute while we're waiting for things to happen. Once you have that data, you can basically, I used to take the data, insert the stuff from the spreadsheet into it, but now that I have this set up, it's actually easier to paste the data into this spreadsheet. In general terms, the yellow cells are sort of guiding your eye to things to read, which are adjacent to things where you may want to make adjustments. So for instance, whatever time zone you're in, the data from the National Weather Service comes back referenced to Greenwich Mean Time, universal time. And so you need to shift the timestamp to your time zone that you're working in so that, things make sense. Like if you forget to do that, you'll be looking at stuff and saying, why are the fan systems starting at midnight and shutting down at 8 in the morning? Well, they aren't. That's Greenwich Mean Time. The fans are actually starting, you know, at, you know, 8 to 4 or something like that. So one of the things this spreadsheet does is shift the date and time stamp to the time zone you pick. So you basically put in how many hours you need to shift from Greenwich Mean Time here. Excuse me. And then you put in a time zone name there. And all that does is it lets Excel label this label right here is actually a formula that goes and picks up that word and inserts it into that line. So it just sort of a little convenience thing. The other thing is Greenwich Mean Time doesn't know about daylight savings time. And so you can enter up to 3 years worth of, you know, I usually don't get more than 3 years of data, so I have this set up for 3 years. And so you can go enter the point for the years you're getting that the time change happens. And if you don't know that, this link explains daylight savings time historically and stuff. This link actually takes you to a little NASA website that has a table that says here's when these things happened, for the recent recent time, and you can figure it out mathematically too. Anyway, so you put in those dates, and then basically one of the things the spreadsheet does, one of the problems with the data is it comes in, and actually I need to format this a little differently. The column width didn't support the number that was there, so I'm going to format it as a number. Yeah, so the date and time come in as this serial string of numbers. It's in the format of year and then month, day, hour, and minute. Excel can't recognize that, and the reason it was an exponential is the column width that was there before wasn't big enough to let all this display, so it just made it an exponential. And so you have to do some Excel tricks to take this apart, and that's what these columns do. Separate out the row, the month, day, the hour, and minute, and then put it back together into a text string that Excel will recognize. Excel actually works with serial numbers, not dates. Each day increments a serial number by 1, and 0 is like January 1st, 1900. And so what that means is January 1st, 2013 was 41,275 days after January 1st, 1900. And that lets Excel, add and subtract dates, and makes you able to do math with dates and a whole bunch of stuff. So like 1 hour is 1 divided by 24. And so when you're scaling axes, that's how you have to be thinking. And that can make you a little crazy until you figure it out. But I built a little spreadsheet that like you can enter the date and time you want, and it converts it to the number for you. So if you're scaling an axis, you can do that. And it also gives you the increments associated with, common values that we might be interested in. So that tab is back here just so you can use it. This is just some garbage from me messing around, and up at the top it explains all that, why this is happening and stuff. So I might even just clear that out since this is a master. Okay, so, and we'll get to paste in the data here in a minute. I'm just showing you what the spreadsheet does. So it basically takes this apart and builds a date and time out of it that Excel can recognize, converts it to that serial number, then formats that serial number so it reads back as a date and time. And then it takes that serial number and it adjusts it for the time zone, and it adjusts it for the daylight savings time state. Oh, there I formatted that as numbers, and so now we have the numbers. Now I'm going to go in there, this little educational thing here, format these cells. I'm going to put them back so they show up as a date, and I'm going to use a custom format that's day, 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 year, 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 slash month, month, slash day, day, hour, hour, AM slash PM. And that code basically tells Excel to write out the full name of the day and then a 4-day, year, month, day, and then hour. And so those are the points in time when the time change happens. Except I realized this should have been, it's 2 a.m. in our country. I forgot to make that change. Let me fix that too. Oops. Okay, so now I got that fixed. So Excel takes this data and takes this, you know, Excel recognized date and time, and then it adjusts it for your time zone and for daylight savings time. And so that's what ends up in this column. Um, Basically, these two cells here, this cell basically just picks up that first date and it uses it in a label. That's how this chart automatically, this label will update with that date, which comes from this cell, and then this date is that date right there, and it's fed by that cell. So this one is always going to be here. This one's going to be wherever your last row is, and so basically you have to go and find the last row of data in this column and reference that, basically just to equals that last, the last cell, the bottom cell in this column, if you want that formula to update properly. And then these two green cells just convert those dates to the serial number Excel works with, so that if you're setting this chart up, you can just go in and if you're going to format the axis, click on the axis, you right click and say format axis, and over here you see those numbers. That's where you set up the range. And so I want this chart to start on the first day of my data. So if I go back here and look, that's number 41 to 75 and end at 42 to 49. Those are the dates of my data range. And if you look, those are the numbers. Oh, I guess I didn't. I added some data for, and so see, I need to adjust it. 41 to 75, 42 to 49. 42 to 49 point. And now when I do that, you notice it shifted that axis for me. And then these are how many days between the major and minor grids. Anyway, this isn't about formatting charts so much. It just shows you. That's why that's there. It's just to make it easy. But for that to work, you got to remember to adjust that pointer to point to the right cell. Okay. If you enter the airport name above it, that's what creates that part of the label. And then basically this cell here goes and looks up, the WMO stands for World Meteorological Organization. They have site numbers for all these, and so that basically goes and looks at this cell here and basically says that's the site, which also is what builds that part of the label. So anyways, those are just some things that set up the label. The other thing this spreadsheet does is once you've got your data in it, and we'll put the data in here in just a minute, it basically creates a little table for you that grabs the temperature and grabs the dew point, and then it uses this little Excel add-in called Get Psyched to basically calculate all the other psychrometric parameters like relative humidity, wet bulb temperature, and enthalpy. And again, this isn't about Get Psyched. If you look at my blog posts, they talk about Get Psyched. Guys in the office, I set you the link to Get Psyched. It's a little free Excel plugin that basically, once you've installed it, you now have formulas. Like if I click in a cell here and I say equals and start to type, enthalpy, notice there's now a formula called enthalpy. And if I double click on that and open up the metrics, I can point to cells and it'll calculate the enthalpy for me based on temperature and one other parameter. You can put a fixed pressure in, but with this kind of data, you usually get barometric pressure back. And so you can actually adjust for the pressure. It makes a minor difference. The situation basically tells Excel whether you're going to use wet bulb dew point, or relative humidity as the second parameter. So anyway, that's a handy little plugin to have. It's free. If you Google get psyched KW engineering, you'll find it. So anyway, this the other thing the spreadsheet does is it grabs the time, grabs the temperature and dew point from this file and the pressure, and then calculates all the other parameters that we might want to use, like enthalpy or wet bulb or humidity. Makes a little table for you that you can then use, VLOOKUP in to look up a value associated with a certain day and hour of the day. It also basically just pulls together the maximum, minimum, and average for the entire data set for all those parameters. For that to work, you have to go adjust this formula so that it points to the entire column that you've imported. For instance, if you had half as many rows, you wouldn't have to point down as far. If you had twice as many rows because you brought back 5 years of data or something, you'd have to adjust this. So and then there's some links built in that just so you can jump around a little easier. If I click on that, it takes me back to where I came from. This link here takes me back to those. So those are just sort of little conveniences that are built in. So I guess now we're to the point where we can go ahead and enter our data. So I'm going to go back and look and just see if the recent order is there yet. If it isn't, I'll use my other order. So click on this link. No, it's not there yet. So I'm going to go ahead and use, I put in an order for that a while ago. Oops. I'm just going to go ahead and go get it this way. Okay, so there's all the data. I'm going to select it all. I thought there'd be a way to export it to Excel, but I guess that's not going to happen. But if I select it all and copy it, I can then open a blank spreadsheet. New is what I meant, not open, blank. And then I believe if I say paste, oh, that didn't work. I'm used to doing this a different way, so I'm stumbling around here a little bit. Let's see if it'll do it this way. It didn't parse it out for me. No, that didn't work either. Here's what I'm used to doing. And I suspect there's a way to do this with that version of the data too. I'm just not succeeding at that right now. In any case, okay, yeah, I just remembered. I don't want to paste it into Excel. I want to paste it into a text file. So basically, if I go to the directory where I want to put it, so I have a directory in my technical library where I keep all this weather stuff because I use it a lot. Where is it? Weather. There it is. And I already have some Seattle data, so this will just be more Seattle data. And so I'm going to make a new folder, and this is 2014 01-01 through 2015-09-23. I just happen to remember that. Oops. There should be a dash, not a zero. So I'm going to make a folder there. And I'm going to say make a new text file, new text document, and I'm going to call this raw data, or anything that makes sense. I'm going to open it. Oh, there it is. Opened up on my other screen. So I'm going to open it up, and I'm going to go where to go. Okay, now I'm going to say select all. I'm going to say copy. It's on my clipboard. I'm going to go to that file and I'm going to paste it in. So there it is. Okay, and so not very usable to me yet, but that's not a huge problem. Excel can import that. So I'm going to say File, Save, so that I got it saved. And now I'm going to go back to Excel. And I don't need this anymore. So no, I don't want to do that. And so now I'm going to say File, Open, and I'm going to navigate to the folder that has that in it, which is in this folder. It's under Seattle, Seattle, here. And you think, well, heck, where'd the file go? Didn't I just put it there? Well, what's going on is Excel is looking for Excel file types right now. If I go and say all files, there it is. So now when I pick that and say open, Excel says, well, I sort of think I can open that, but I don't recognize this yet. Is it, you can basically, right now, if we brought it in, it would put the whole string of numbers in that row into one cell. We want it broken up. And so you can actually say, well, put a column here. And move them around that way. It takes a guess for you. But sometimes, the data is not uniform, and so you can't just get a column that hits it all. And that's okay, because this is what's called a delimited file. What that means is you can tell Excel, well, when you see a comma, like a CSV file, comma separated value, or a tab or a space or a semicolon, assume that's the end of one piece of data and the beginning of the next. So I'm going to tell it it's a delimited file. I'm going to say next, and I happen to know, this is showing you your results. So it's not a tab, but if I pick space, now it found all those columns. So I don't need tab. So I actually know this will be a space. Usually they're comma or space. But you can just play with it until you see it broken up the way you need it broken up. And then you say next, and I usually just accept the defaults at this point and say finish. And so now I've got that data into a spreadsheet, and you'll notice that it's broken up into individual cells like I want it. Now, one weird little thing that happens with this data is the first row is shifted over one column. In other words, basically, this is the year, month, day column, not this. And in fact, there you see that funny exponent. So one of the things you're going to want to do is expand this column to maybe 25, and then just make it a number so you can see the year, month, date thing. So format cells, number, and we don't want a comma in this one just because we want Excel to work with it just that way. And then we don't need 2 decimal places. We don't even want 2 decimal places. Okay, so we need to shift these headers over. So I'm going to say click in the first cell. I'm going to go Control, Shift, and right arrow key. That picks up the headers. I'm going to say Control C to copy them. I'm going to go back here. I'm going to say Control X to delete them after I'm done here. I'm going to click in the first cell. I'm going to say Control V for paste, and now the headers are where they should be. And there's our data set just showed up. So the only difference between what I just did and what you can do when you get that data set, let's just look at if you kept the web page open like I did, if you kept that web page open, notice before it was saying the link was broken. Well, now when I click on that, there's the data. So you could do what I just did, or you can basically say right click over that and then do the save target as thing and put it where you want it. So just a different way of doing it. So just so you know. Anyway, getting back to our data file. Now the trick is we need to get this data into the right place in our spreadsheet. Okay, let's just look at something here real quick. I didn't bring back as much data here as I had in that Columbus data file. Like I only have 6,983 rows of data here. I know that's a lot, but I mean compared to this one where, oh, I need to, one real quick thing. I have some filters on now. I'll show you that in a minute. This data set, I have 5 times as much data, basically 34,000 rows. Okay, so about that, before you paste the data in, we're going to filter this to get rid of the bad data, and I've already done that. And this link clicks you to the column. Oops, that didn't work. So there's the link I need to rebuild, I guess. Or maybe I zigged when I should have zagged. Oh, yeah, no, that one worked. Here's the link that takes me to the columns I need to filter. So these 3 columns I need to filter, and I'll show you that in a minute. You'll notice they do have the little filter symbols. I'm just going to turn filtering off right now. So I'm going to turn that off. I hit data, I click filter, and it takes a second with a big file like this, or a couple of seconds. But in a minute you're going to see all those little drop down symbols disappear and the filters will go away. And I'll explain more about that in a minute. But to do what we're about to do, we want the filters off. And so now's the time to save this file. This is our template. So now I want to save this as the actual weather file. And so I'm going to go to my Seattle directory. And I'm going to basically say whatever I want to call it. I'm going to call this one Seattle 2015 or 20. This is 2014-01 through 2015-09-25. Okay, so I'm going to save that. So now I have, I won't overwrite my template. So yay. So you could just paste your data in on top of all of this, but the problem is, since there's more rows here than there were in the others, you could get mixed up. You'd have all of a sudden data from the other file present. So I usually clear it out before I paste stuff in. And you may be looking and saying, well, why didn't this number get formatted this way? Well, that's because when I did that formatting, I had the filters on and this row was hidden, so that that formatting didn't apply. And so I can fix that real quick by highlighting or picking that cell, picking my little format painter brush, pick that cell, and then hit Control, Shift, and down arrow, and say Enter. Oh, I didn't double click. See? Okay. To get that to work, I had to double click this, so I remembered it. Hit this cell, and then Control, Shift, down arrow. And now it applied that formatting to all the cells in that column. So that's fixed. But what I want to do, I'm going to paste my data into this spreadsheet in 2 places. I'm going to put the first 3 columns here, and then I'm going to put the rest of it here. Basically, it's the white areas, okay? It's kind of like the White Album for the Beatles, the white areas. I keep the headers. I don't overwrite the headers because that helps me remind stuff. So I'm going to basically pick all the data that's in here. So I'm going to go, what I just did there is I clicked into this cell, I held the Shift key down, and I right arrowed over twice. Now I'm going to hold Control down while I'm holding Shift and hit the down arrow. That takes me to the last number Excel can find, which is what I wanted to do. I'm going to highlight all that. I'm going to make sure I saved this. It's not my template. I'm going to right click and I'm going to say Clear Contents. So now all that data is gone, and you get some weird stuff because now Excel doesn't have anything to work with in there. That'll get fixed here in a minute. I'm going to do the same thing with these columns. Oops, but I don't want to go over all the way. So I'm going to go Control, Shift, and arrow, individual arrow key. So those are the columns I want to clear while holding the Shift, hold Control down and down arrow. Oops, get out of that. And down arrow. took me to the bottom of the data set. Again, just clear it out. Okay, so now what I want to do is paste my new data into those same columns. And I have yet to have a file come in without basically these exact same columns, but it's good to cross-check that. So I want to go grab the first three columns, which should be U.S. Air Force W-band number and the month, date, time number. So let's go to our other data set, get to the top of it. Excuse me. So first three columns, and I just used the same techniques to pick all that up, but I'm going to say Control C, or you could also right click and say copy. There's lots of ways to do it. So now I got that on that clipboard. I'm going to bounce back to my spreadsheet. I'm going to hit that cell there, and I'm going to say Control V or paste, and it put all that data in for me. Now for some reason it made all the row heights big. I'm not sure why it did that, but that's easy enough to fix. I'll highlight the row, a column, go to the bottom, get them all highlighted. And I'm not sure why it did that, to be honest, but I'll just set them all back to oh, there's something out at the end that has a bigger row height. That's what happened. So I'm just going to put them all back to 19.5, which I happen to know is the default row height in the spreadsheet. Okay, so there's that data in. And sorry about my phone ringing. It'll take a message here in a minute. So now I need to go and grab, I'm going to close this, I'm not worried about formatting right now. Now I need to go and grab these columns, which should start out with the wind direction and end up with the SD column, which I can't remember what that means right off the top of my head. So I go to here, and so I'm going to pick up these columns now. And one way to verify that I'm getting what I wanted is go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30. So I should have 30 columns I'm going to pick up. So come back to here. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30. So that worked out. And you'll notice the temperature and dew point columns are there just like they should have been. So I did that by holding down the shift key and arrowing over. Now I'm going to keep the shift key down, hit control at the same time and down arrow. Now I've got all those, and I'm going to copy them. I'm going to say Control C, and then I'm going to go to this other the place I want to put it. I'm going to go Control V, and there's all my data. And you notice Excel is rebuilt, the date and time and all that stuff. I'm in the Pacific time zone, so I keep that at 8. These should be fine for the years I'm concerned with, so it makes all those adjustments for me. And if I go look at my chart, I can see that the chart's there, but since my data started here, I don't need the chart to start on the 13th. And so this is where I might want to adjust the axis. Okay, and so if I go back to my data tab, this is where I need to have this cell point at my last bit of data. So if I basically say equals and then just go looking for it, I'm just going to click into this cell. I'm going to hit Control down arrow, and you'll notice I have some garbage in here. So let's do something else first. What happened there, I forgot about that. I have fewer rows of data than my original spreadsheet had. So basically there's a bunch of empty cells at some point, and so I'm going to get rid of them. Now if you had more data, you'd have to do something a little different. But basically, I put a mark in the spreadsheet in the form of a blue row at the bottom of the original example data set. So if you hit this link, it takes you down to there. If you had more data than I had in my original spreadsheet, you'd paste past this. And what you would have to do would be copy and paste the formulas in the orange, the olive cells into all the rows that had data. If you have, and that happens two places, and the notes at the top of the spreadsheet remind you of that. So don't, it's I think pretty clear. You have to do that here and in this table over here. If you have less data, which is the case here, we actually want to go ahead and delete these rows out. But if you don't delete this row out, then the range selection in the chart will still work. You won't have to redo that because it's referenced actually to here, not to here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to basically delete these rows out. And the way I found that, let me show you how I found that again. I'm going to go to the top of the spreadsheet. So this link takes me to that blue row. And then the way I found the data is I just clicked into an empty cell and I did Control up arrow and it finds the first number. So then I'm going to highlight the row right below that and then do Shift Control down arrow. Oops, that got me to the end of the spreadsheet. Oh, I need a cell that has something in it. So like, oh, I know what we'll do. Let's find that blue row again. And we could scroll and stuff, that'd work too. Find the blue row. Okay, we'll do it the other way. Highlight that row, and then Control Shift up arrow, and that finds that last row. I let go of Shift, I down arrow once. Now I have all those highlighted, and I delete them. So I just say delete. Okay, so now I don't have empty cells. And basically now if I go back to the top of the sheet again, and there's a link that takes you there, now I just need to make this point. And so if I say equals, and then get in that column and go Control down arrow, now it finds that last piece of data. I say enter. And so now the last date, and that corresponds to a number of 42249. The starting number is 42005. If I go back to my chart, I right click, I get into that axis, I click on the axis, I right click and say format, and I put those two numbers there, which because I can't walk and chew gum I forgot because I was talking. So it's 42005 and 42249. 42005. So that one's okay. So we'll say 42005. Enter. And so now it spreads the chart out to look at just the data I pulled back. The dew point is the soft blue line, the temperature is the soft red line. You can play with scaling, whatever you want to do to get it, the colors and size you want. Now you notice it looks like it got down to 0 pretty regularly in Seattle. That doesn't really happen. What's going on there, and this is where the filter thing comes in. The weather station hiccups every once in a while, so you get bad data, and it usually shows up as these little asterisks. So there's 3 columns you need to filter to get rid of the asterisks, and basically it's the temperature column, the dew point column, and the pressure column, because those are the columns the spreadsheet's using to calculate things. The fast way to get there is this link will jump you over. They're the columns that are highlighted in red, and the way you do a filter is you highlight the header row and you go to the data tab and you pick filter. And you'll notice when I did that, it put these little drop down things into each column. So now I'm going to jump back to those columns and I'm going to pick the drop down in the temperature column, and we're going to filter the asterisks out of these columns. And so what you do is you pick this drop down, and basically any value that's in that column is now collected right here, and we don't care. We just want to find the ones we don't want, and we uncheck the asterisks. So we say there, and it'll take it a minute to go through and do that, make that adjustment. We'll do the same thing with the dew point, and there may not be anything, but there are. So we'll say okay there, and then we'll do the same thing with the altimeter, which is basically the column that the spreadsheet uses to calculate the barometric pressure. And we already, since we filtered the asterisks out every place else, there were no occurrences where you didn't log altimeter data even though you logged other data. So there aren't any asterisks to filter out there. But what you'll notice is, now that we've done the filtering, now all those erroneous data are gone and we just have a clean data set. So this link will jump you back. If you had more data, more rows than in the template, you'd actually have to go to this chart and reselect the data. You'd have to right click and say select data, and for each data series you'd have to edit it to basically pick all the rows that have data in it. If you're used to Excel, that's not hard at all. So I think that's it. So that should show you how to use this. I guess one thing to show you here, let me find a place it happens. I'm looking for a place. What the filter actually does, just so you know, the filter doesn't eliminate the row, it just hides the row. And so what that means is, if I copied and pasted this data, I would actually, when I pasted it into a different tab, I would actually get all the data, including the hidden data. You may or you may not want to do that. If you wanted a clean set of this data, what you need to do is copy it and then paste the values into the cells, and that will eliminate the hidden rows from the data set that you create. So anyways, I think that's pretty much everything. This video is going to be up on YouTube, so the spreadsheet, when you open it up, will actually have a link to take you to this video. And that's it. That's how you use a spreadsheet, and hopefully it's helpful to some of you, and we'll talk to you later.